Hi, I'm going to attempt here to make a quick video on threading the upper part of a Bernina 800 series machine, 820, 830, and talk a little bit about the needle threader. When threading the machine, I'm just using a thread stand here on my workbench, but this works the same should you have the thread stand for the machine clipped on. I was told by the dealer that it's a good idea to have your hand up here. Now you're not going to see my hand, but I have my hand here, and just add a little bit of tension here, just a slight amount, so that the thread doesn't bunch up when you're threading the machine. When you run the thread across the top of the machine, you'll see a little metal tab here. You would think they'd have it marked or something, but you got to make sure that the thread goes on this side of the tab, because this is where the thread drops down into the upper tension discs on the machine. If you have the thread on this side of the tab, you're going to miss the tension discs. You're not going to have any upper thread tension when you start sewing, and you're going to end up getting nesting underneath the material. Usually if the machine is threaded wrong, that's when you get the nesting problem, which is the top thread all bunched up underneath the bottom of what you're sewing on, simply because you don't have any upper tension. So I'm going to get a seat here, and doing my best to hold my phone with a holder here so I can use both hands. Now you can see when you're threading the machine, I have this end cap off, this end part here off, and you can pop this off of your machine by using the multifunction tool or lightly using a screwdriver. There's a little notch here on the end of the cover, and your multifunction tool has a part on here just for that, and you can push that in. It pushes in this plastic latch, so don't push on it too hard. You don't want to break it off. Just push on it gently and hang on to the cover, because the cover's going to come flying off. So with my hand over the other side, when you thread your machine, the thread's going to drop down, and it's going to drop down into the take-up arm. And as you bring it over underneath and go this way with it a little bit, the thread up here drops into place. Now, to do the needle, and this is where I'm going to have to do the needle threader, you want to bring the thread over the needle threader, and there's a little plastic pin here. And what you are doing is running the thread up over, down under the plastic pin. Sorry that I said up under. You're running it down over the plastic pin, coming up the other side. So that pin holds the thread in place. Cut it off. And if you're lucky, no, I shouldn't say if you're lucky. Most of the times, these needle threaders work. There we go. It worked perfectly. Now let's assume that the needle didn't thread that time, because this is my only beef with these machines, is this needle threader doesn't always work all the time. But when you think of what it has to do, it has to guide a little piece of thread through the eye of a needle and pick it up and pull it back through, and it's kind of difficult. But most of the times these work. So what happens when you go to rethread the needle is, if it didn't work the first time, you're going to push the needle threading button. And you can see with this cover off here, what happens when you're starting the rethreading process is you get a bunch of thread in here because your take-up arm comes down. What you want to do to rethread the needle is pull the thread out, 4 inches or so, to take that slop out of here. And again, you can hold your hand over on this side while you're doing that to add, a slight amount of tension, and give it a pull, and then now you've gotten rid of this clump of thread up here. So then we would go to thread the needle again, thread the needle threader, come down and up, cut it off, and that time it didn't thread. I have this one works about 50% of the time, and that's the way it seems that most of these needle threaders work. It's going to all depend on what needle you're using, what type of thread you're using. Sometimes they work all day long without any problems, and other days they just don't work the best. And I believe that's why Bernina includes a manual needle threader There are other videos that show you how these work, but a manual needle threader comes with the machine, and I know why, because I've worked on about a dozen of these or more and sold them, and it's my only beef with the machine is the needle threader. Let's try this again. So we're going to go to thread the needle. Take up arm comes down, you get your bunch of thread there. You're pulling it out about 6 inches or so. You can feel when you've taken the slop out. You're going to run the thread down, up on the other side of the plastic pin, cut it off, and let's see what we get. Didn't happen that time. What I have found, I'll try and do this here because I have a little bit of time left on this video here, is, and I'll show you what happens. Let's thread this again. Thread it up, cut it off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the machine off midway as that arm's swinging around, and I'll show you what happens here when the needle is threaded and how this needle threader works. Okay, I shut off the machine, and this is going to be hard to see, so let's get a bunch of light on it, and I'll show you what happens here. There's a little holder in here and a little clamp that when this arm swings around to meet up with this back arm, now the back arm's got a little hook on it that goes through the needle eye. And here's your thread here. You can see, hopefully, that's going to get picked up by the little needle eye that goes through the needle. So in super slow-mo, with me turning the hand wheel, you can see that the thread goes back and it's introduced to the hook. The thread right now is like bending around the needle. And if you're lucky, it should have at that point gotten picked up by the hook that went through the needle. And it didn't, and that's why it doesn't thread sometimes. Note to Bernina, I have taken these apart. I've actually modified this guide a little bit to allow that thread to go back in there and be raised up slightly higher, because in many cases this thread here is just a little bit lower than the hook that goes through the needle. So it's missed. Back it up and that's what happens. Or this thread here is simply a little bit too loose, and I've loosened it up even more now by touching it. But if this thread is just a little loose and it's not taut and it goes back in here, it's not going to be picked up by the needle. So I want to let you know this is a common problem with these machines. Most of the times they work, but again, it might depend on what needle you're using and what thread you're using, and that's why they include the manual needle threader with the machine. Okay, thanks for watching. Look me up on eBay, and down below you can find my email address. Thanks for watching.